Previously on Jay Speaks.
So if you can go back in time and start Sky Infinity all over again from the ground up, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
Well, knowing what I know now, I would not go back and do it.
Oh my God!
I've done it. But I will say I won't. Seriously, I've done it and I was like, okay, I don't need to go back and do it. But I will say I'll give myself grace. More grace and more compassion to grow. Not putting, those hard stops or the pressure on myself to work with certain people or to have to convince anybody that my business was necessary. That's what I would do differently. I think that your customers, not that they will find you, you have to be visible, you have to be somewhere. But you will know what customer is your customer. Too many times you have to convince somebody, and once you get to the convincing part, you don't seem like you know your work. But let that go, and I would just continue to have grace. Okay, I'll let that part go. And then when I have that, I felt like I would move better, have different relationships too. Have better relationships actually, where it didn't feel like I was being a salesperson, and I would probably still have that relationship because instead of trying to convince and sell, we actually just had a great conversation and a good relationship. So I think that would be something that I move differently with.
So being grounded in what you provide,
right?
And
always.
knowing that it's good work or good services,
right?
And you don't necessarily need to hook and reel everyone.
Right, exactly.
Like it's okay if somebody comes to you and they listen to your, elevator pitch and they turn away. You don't have to chase them. If they don't want to come to you naturally, then let it go. Just be confident that someone else in the future will see the same light that you see in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Check out today how Sky Infinity transforms toxic work cultures. Jindina's Guide to Employee Well-Being and Trust.
when you understand your rights and say, you know what, I do have the right to remain silent, I think you should use it, right? And just be compliant. Because if you truly believe in the rule of law, you know that it's going to work out. You don't have to fight. Fighting authority, you're not going to win. Whether it's a police officer, whether it's a principal, whether it's your parent, you're not going to win that battle. So don't try to fight it. Don't fight against authority. Not in that way. Fight it through the rule of law. And so that's what we try to teach them. Your voice is there, but there's a way you do it. And you can come off threatening. And when you come off threatening, yelling, nobody's gonna hear you. Just imagine me, you yelling at somebody. You think they're really gonna hear what we have to say? Or they only gonna hear us screaming at them, right? And so that's what we just try to teach the kids from that social emotional piece of look at it from a different point of view. And how would you feel? Don't you wanna go home tonight? You know what I mean? That principal doesn't know what you're going through. Did you communicate that? Did you communicate all that you're going through at home? Did you say anything, or you just come and yelling and screaming at the principal? You know, you have to take a step back. And it comes back to respect. Respect yourself and respect the people around you.
Hello everyone. For those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. And for those of you who are subscribed to Jay Speaks, thank you so much and welcome back. As you know, it is my mission, it is my passion to bring to you all conversation topics that are positive, motivational, educational, and informational. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy to be here with Dawn Bizzell, who's the co-founder and the executive director of the Legal Kid Foundation. The Legal Kid Foundation believes that every child, regardless of their background, deserves to see their potential reflected in the world around them. The Legal Kid Foundation's programs equipped youth with the tools to break cycles of poverty, inequality, and injustice by giving them the confidence to not only navigate complex systems, but also to advocate for themselves, their families, and their communities. By fostering resilience, promoting critical thinking, and providing mentorship, the Legal Kid Foundation inspires the next generation of leaders to overcome their challenges and create lasting, positive change in the world. Through partnerships, education, and empowerment, the Legal Kid Foundation creates opportunities for youth to redefine their futures and ensures that they not only succeed academically, but also grow as responsible and engaged leaders who understand the value of justice, fairness, and community. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit back, relax, and most importantly, listen. And hopefully after today's episode, you understand for yourself why the Legal Kid Foundation is on a mission to empower youth with the knowledge, mentorship, and leadership skills to transform their futures. So Dawn, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Nice, nice. How have you been? How's your week going so far?
Everything's going really, really well. Just, we have a field trip coming up this Friday with the students, so we're really looking forward to that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, please, share with me, share with our audience, who is Dawn Bizzell, and also take this opportunity to talk about the Legal Kid Foundation, please.
Okay, well, I'm Dawn Bizzell, I'm co-founder and executive director of the Legal Kid Foundation. And what the Legal Kid Foundation does is that we empower youth in legal literacy, social emotional learning, and regular literacy, understanding it's important or it's okay to learn how to read. Kids struggle with reading sometimes, and sometimes it's okay to let them know we can learn to read in a very fun and interactive way. And so what our job is to do is take those three facets, right, and create programming for the children to be able to learn, I guess, again, in a fun, interactive way.
So please go into detail. What do you mean? Give some examples of, fun and interactive way.
So
what does that entail?
So we want to be inclusive to all children, right? All learning styles, children with disabilities. And so every activity that we do is an interactive activity. It's not like a PowerPoint. We can do a Jeopardy game. We'll do bingo games. We'll do a STEM activity, but it builds up. So an example would be, we have a rule of law module, right? And so what we do is that we give every kid a pocket constitution. And we say, you know what? It doesn't matter, what your background is, who you identify as, how much money you have. This book says that you matter, and now we're going to show you how to use it. And so that is when we show them the difference between a rule and a law, right? And we talk about what the Constitution is. And so we start talking about the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, and what are they? So no, we don't read the whole first 10 amendments through. We take out the important part, like your First Amendment, right? Freedom of speech, press, religion, assembly, those type of things. Just key bullet points, right? And so we'll create like a bingo game. And the kids, they absolutely love it. And so they're learning, but they're having fun while they're learning. And so then we'll take that and then we'll go on to do a more like a Family Feud style game. Given an example would be Amir is praying in the park and the police says that he can't do that. What amendment is being infringed upon? Because the kids do learn about the Bill of Rights by 3rd grade, but do they know how to apply it in real life? And so that's what our job is to do, is just take the very things that they're already learning in school, turn it in a fun way, but also how can they apply it? How can they envision themselves in these situations, right? And so when I talk about that social emotional learning aspect of it, let's use an example of how we teach Miranda. So Miranda is your 5th and 6th Amendment. There's 4 cases that come from Miranda. 2 of them one has to do with someone with a disability, someone who couldn't read, right? And so we talk about 5th, 6th Amendment. What is that? And we talk about, what type of voice do we have when we deal with authority? Because your authority can be your parents. Authority can be someone at the school. People always jump to authority as police, but no, authority starts at home, right? Authority starts at school, right? When you start seeing behaviors from children, you're going to see it at home and at school before you ever see it in the streets, right? So we teach them about that voice. Most of the time, kids have either an aggressive voice or a passive voice. So we bring in a licensed social worker to work with the kids with role playing, to have an assertive voice. What is an assertive voice, And so that shows them, okay, I can advocate for myself, but I can advocate for myself appropriately. I don't need to be aggressive to get my point across. And passive is going to get you bullied, right? So we don't want you to be passive either. We want you to know that you matter. That Constitution says you matter. But it's the way we approach it, right? It's the way we advocate for ourselves. And that's where that social emotional learning piece comes in at. So kids can learn how to self-regulate. How do we voice our concerns? How do we advocate for ourselves appropriately?
Wow. No, wow. Just listening to you, I can see that this is something that definitely needs to be instilled in our kids early.
Yes.
The earlier, the better. I definitely did not receive this type of learnings or teachings growing up.
Yes.
So what made you want to go down this path?
So 25 years ago, I am originally from the Philadelphia suburbs. And I actually went to Temple University. That's more in the heart of North Philadelphia. And so I was an education major. So I majored in early childhood, elementary, and special education. And what Temple does is that, at least 25 years ago, they really prepare you to teach. A lot of schools, they just put you in, you see the first time you're in school, you're doing student teaching. No, Temple, you're there for, you have a course with math, you're in a classroom. Science, you're in a classroom. My special ed practicum, I was in a classroom for 20 hours a week. I was in a classroom 5 or 6 times before I even became a student teacher. And so when I was going there, I'm like, oh my goodness, they don't have a curriculum? And I remember the science teacher was like, yeah, we're just gonna go down to the library. Now this is the late 90s. We're just gonna go into the library and we're just gonna, write up some of the lessons. I'm like, don't you need a book? And so I really learned then being raised in the suburbs. So me and Kobe Bryant is the same age, but I didn't live too far from him. So that just tells you the vast difference of where I grew up from and what I encountered to being a student in like the North Philadelphia area where they had such limited resources. And I saw the difference. I was like, wow. I mean, I was just blown away of the difference in the system, that something's maybe 5 miles away is a big difference in the education system. And once I graduated, I was a special education advocate. I was a foster care case manager. I was a teacher. And I always said to myself, that's when I, discovered the school to prison pipeline. I never knew what that was until I discovered it. It was right in my face. I said, these kids are set up to fail. There was no ifs, ands about it to me. It's a setup. And so I said, if I ever had an opportunity to go back, I would do it. And so when COVID happened and I'm at home with my kids, and my kids go to a pretty good school, but I'm looking at the lessons that are coming home, and I said to myself, oh my God, the school to prison pipeline is still around. Because not to say that the school was like that, but what I saw was there was no mastery in the lessons, right? I saw it more as an overview, because when you're dealing with Common Core curriculum, it builds up. So if your kids don't have a good understanding of what's happening in the second grade, third grade, they're going to be lost, right? And so I found myself rewriting the lessons. Not that I said I was going to do. I said, oh my goodness, sweetie, let me show you how to really do this. You know what I mean? And so I found myself rewriting all the lessons for both my kids. And someone said, Dawn, you really need to do this. You need to do this. And my partner now, LexisNexis, is my major partner. They actually approached me and they said, hey, Dawn, we want to get back in, to establish some programs like for our pro bono opportunities for our employees. Can you write up some curriculum for us? And we're going to go ahead and take it out and work here in Raleigh. And I said, okay, I'll do that for you. And so when I wrote it up, they looked at it and they were like, why don't you do it? And then we'll support you. And that's literally how it started. Literally, that's how it started. I started with the Southeast Raleigh Elementary School, where they established that relationship there. And I would go there just to do the same, curriculum I just wrote up. They would come and volunteer there. And me saying, okay, I'm just writing a curriculum for Lexis. So, okay, I'll just do this after school. 3 years later, we're in 6 states. We're expanding to Toronto this fall. It's been an incredible journey. We do more than after school. We're like an elective now. We have partnerships with law schools. So we work with the law schools and with the law students volunteering with our students on Saturdays. And it gives these kids the experiential learning, they're able to envision themselves as law students or lawyers, right? And it's incredible, because sometimes that's what kids just need to see. They need to envision themselves in that space. And so that's why I love my partnership with the law schools, is because the kids are actually at the law school. We're not just at the regular school. We do the program at the law school. And so they're able to, they get so excited coming in there. You should see the parents, the first day of school, the parents coming in with the cameras, oh my God, my kid is at the law school, and they're walking around can I see the library? Can I go into this classroom? And so being able to see that in them and giving them hope, for them to be able to see a vision for their future. And we tell them that this is not about you being a little lawyer. Social workers are extremely important. Police officers are important. There is a place at the table for you, in the legal field. And we want kids to see that law is just not a trial lawyer. A lot of kids think that. But a lot of lawyers are not even trial attorneys. You have intellectual property attorneys, contract attorneys, family law things. And so they're able to see themselves and learn about the system very different than what they may see on TV or what they may be thinking law is. And so our job is to show them to not only just respect the legal system, but understand that you have a seat at the table. The Constitution says you have a seat at the table, but you need to know how to use it. You have to empower yourself. And what we have noticed is that as soon as you give them that tangible item, the pocket Constitution, it's almost like a light bulb comes out because it's tangible. It's not something I'm saying, hey, you matter. I'm showing you that you matter. This book is saying that you matter. And so all the fear, all the, you may have some kids who have low self-esteem or upset or aggressive. Like, it takes that down because now you're able to show them that they matter. And so you start to see behaviors change, right? And our program is not just for children with behaviors, but I'm just saying where we get children, we accept all kids, but we do notice a change in behaviors with these kids because you're showing them that, hey, you got to see that at the table. What are you going to do about it now? What are you going to do about it? We're here to invest in you, right? From 3rd grade to 12th grade. Are you going to show up? Where they're constant, where there's a lot of kids that may not have that. We are that for them, and so is our partners. And that's why I said it's not just teaching them the legal system, it's about the mentorship. It's about believing in them, empowering them to be better than they thought they could ever be.
Wow, so is this program open so you said 3rd grade to what?
12th grade.
3rd grade. So is it all 3rd graders to 12th graders, or is it people who are interested in law?
So
or
it's not
students.
Yeah. So it all depends on where we are. So let's say that we have so we're in New England. So we have a program out in Springfield, Massachusetts. So we'll sit there and promote. Hey, we're doing a law program at the law schools, open up for any student.
Okay.
And they're able to attend. Now, you may have, like, we're here at a club at one of the local middle schools, and it's the Legal Kids Club. And so some kids say, I'm just going to sign because I'm interested in law. But you don't have to be interested in law to be a part of the program.
Interesting. So how has the program evolved? How has the program changed since its conception up until now?
So that's the thing, is like, we started off a little after school, but how we're growing, we're learning each way, right? And so now we're able to really instill even more of that social emotional learning in there when we deal with immigration. The beginning of our module is that we really focus on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights first, before we even jump on the immigration topic. What is that? What is human rights? Because we want these kids to have compassion. A lot of times, children may think, oh, everybody wants to come to the U.S. No, maybe some people don't. Maybe some people have to leave their homes due to famine, due to violence, And so we do an exercise and say, okay, we read a story and we say, if you had to pack, you have a suitcase here and you have to pack everything you own, everything that's important to you, you have to put in that one bag. And they just stop. And so they start listing all the things, but they're looking around, listing all the things that they want to bring, but they have to leave those things behind, including their families, their culture, their schools. And it gets them to start to feel that empathy, right? It starts to make them feel or envision like, maybe my perception, of someone coming to this country, maybe it should change. When you see a student in school who may not speak English, right? Or may not have any friends because they're new, what can you do differently? How could you approach it? So we're trying to, break down those barriers with those kids before we even talk about the immigration. What is immigration? What is an immigrant? What is citizenship? What is deportation? What is a visa? What is a green card? And so really trying to, through our modules, build out that social emotional component, build out that literacy component. That's where I really see how we've been growing. So far, we have impacted over 1,300 children in 3 years. We have 1,900 kids on our waiting list. And it's because we want to make sure that we're growing, but we're still having impact, right? We don't want just a bunch of kids here where it's not as impactful, right? We want that consistency all throughout because we still have relationships with the kids who started, and we need to make sure that we continue to foster those relationships and see them through. I keep going back to it's the consistency. We have to be there constant in their life, okay? When teachers let them down, I'm not saying we'll always be there, but when people let them down, when, you never know what people's family dynamics are, they can always count on their mentors with the Legal Kid Foundation being there, showing up, and giving them the consistent type of programming that they've always had. And so, our evolving is truly making sure that, we keep that same high standard for those children while we also try to bring more children into the fold.
So are all age groups, do they all participate in the program together, or do you have it split up?
We split them up.
Is it by each grade, or is it a range?
It's usually a range. So I'll do elementary, like 3rd through 5th grade, and then we'll have 6th to 8th grade, and then high school.
Okay.
So we like to keep them separate because, high schoolers, like our high schoolers in Philadelphia, they're dealing with some real stuff. We don't need to be exposing our middle schoolers to that, right? And so we want to make sure we keep it separate. Also, we want them to feel safe. So we don't want them sharing things that, maybe a younger kid, they may seem mature, but still they're not to that maturity level, and may blurt things out or say things that are inappropriate. Because when you start talking about, depending on where some of these kids are in their experiences, when you start talking about some of these topics, it triggers them. That's why we have to always add that social emotional aspect to it. It's triggering. Kids are dealing with a lot of bullying, racial bullying. Kids are dealing with different issues with law enforcement sometimes. We had one kid, I will never forget, we were talking about, courts and things like that. This kid was so upset with about a judge. We were talking about a judge. I'm like, why is it? I can see police, you know what I mean? But why are they so upset with a judge? And so I deviated from the curriculum. And so I had a judge come in the next session so the kids can get to know a judge. And they were like, oh my God, are you a real judge? Because they couldn't believe the judge came to see them. And and I was like, yeah. And when he says, and I know I'm going to pronounce it wrong. He said something about, I had a guardian ad litem. I hope I said ad litem. And it hit me right there. The kid was in foster care. The guardian ad litem is an attorney for a child that's in foster care. And so that's when it hit me. The child probably may not favor judges because a judge in their poor little mind took their parents away. And so just being aware of that, but I couldn't figure out why. So that's why I brought it in to see. But it also showed this kid that judges are incredible. A lot of times these kids, because of what they may see on TV or what they're told, they put up these defenses, whether it's a judge, whether it's a police, whatever their trauma is, they've already formulated these stereotypes. And so if we're able to pick up on that, that's why the classes can't be too big. If we're able to pick up on that, we're able to tweak, some of the next sessions to really talk about that, or bring in, like I said, I brought in a judge, figure out what's really, really going on to give them a different perspective.
So if you can recall, what are the topics that are taught within each age group? So if you just highlight.
So all the topics I'm going to mention are in every age group. How we deliver them may be different, right? So, we always start off with the rule of law because it's the foundation of democracy, right? We can't jump onto these other laws if they don't understand what the Constitution is and these amendments. So we always start with the rule of law. We have voting, your right, privilege, or responsibility. What are voting rights? What is it? We have environmental eye-openers, right? It's important for these kids to understand that there's environmental law out there. What does that look like? What is the Safe Drinking Water Act? What is clean water? We have several different mock trials, different mock trial aspects of it. We have bullying. We have, I know I'm missing one of them, your fight to remain silent, Miranda. And, you know, I always tell these kids, honestly, I think that's what actually one of my most important lessons I teach, especially with middle school and high schoolers, because, you know, they start to feel themselves and, you know, and I tell them, I said, you know, how you handle situations could get you killed. That's why I really push on that role model, that, you know what I mean, sort of that modeling the behavior of that aggressive versus passive. Because to me, it's dangerous. You know, these kids have to curb their emotions. They have to regulate because it's a serious situation. And so immigration we do have. And a new one is coming out this year is Law and Order CSI edition. Yes, I'm going to take it all the way there. We're going to start. We're going to start where the kids are coming on. When they come into the room, they're coming in on an environmental spill. And just like Law and Order, they're going to come in as detectives. You know, some of the kids are going to be detectives. They got to sit there and, you know, look at this crime scene. You know, where's the evidence? How do we put the evidence in a bag to preserve the evidence? You know, different things like that. And then, you know, once their case is, built up, they're going to go ahead and take it to the prosecutor's office, right? The prosecutor's going to have to build that case up to see, can it go to a grand jury, right? Okay, we're going to go to trial. Then we'll have the defense. You know, they'll come on the scene. So I'm really excited about bringing that Law and Order CSI edition this fall.
Oh, wow, that sounds very interesting. Very, very interactive and fun.
Yes. And believe it or not, these kids don't even know that they're learning. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They don't even know. And because, like I said, me having that background in early childhood, elementary, and special education, it really helped me be able to design these curriculums to be inclusive. Because when I design it, I'm thinking about every type of disability that there's out there. And I'm saying, how would this kid be incorporated in the lesson, right? If I have a kid who can't read, do I need all this writing here? So one of the major things that we do is that part of it is having these volunteers. So the volunteers with the law students, with Alexis, with different other legal professionals is essential. We try to have 1 to 4. So 1 volunteer per 4 students, because we want these kids to feel like they belong there. We don't want any kid to feel like they can't be a part of it because they can't read the words or they're struggling. I remember we were out in Dayton, Ohio. We did a program out there 3 months ago. And the student really, really struggled. They didn't have to tell me the disability. I knew. I could tell. And so I remember the grandmother stayed all day. And she said, "Are you sure he's going to be okay?" I said, "Of course he's going to be okay. He has a seat at the table." And she was just crying. She could not believe that we were involving her grandson in everything. And we weren't pushing him away or being frustrated. I said, if anything, we were embracing him even more. And she told me, she said, "Are you sure he's going to be okay for the trial? By this time we get to the trial." I said, "Yeah, I'm going to make him a bailiff." "Are you sure?" I said, "Absolutely. Why wouldn't we? He's going to be here. Why wouldn't he be the bailiff?" And we had a volunteer that stood with him the entire time. And, you know, he was antsy, he couldn't act, but she just calmed him down. And when it was his turn, he said, "Okay, you're going to talk now." Now, he couldn't get up and down because he would have been all over the place. But he sat right there, right next to the judge, and he participated. And this grandmother still emails me and says, "Thank you so much for just being there for my grandson and letting him be a part of this." I'm just so grateful. And that's what our job is to do, is to show every child, no matter what your background is, no matter what your disability is, you have a place at the table, because the Constitution says you have a place at the table. So if the Constitution says you have a place at the table, you have a place at our table as well. And so just showing them. So that's why the volunteers are extremely important, because we want every child to feel like they belong.
Wow. Just curious, so do you have any formerly incarcerated individuals come and speak to you?
So I
Students?
don't.
Is that something of interest?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course it would be. Of course it would be, especially with our high schoolers, probably even middle schoolers now. You know, for them to understand that, especially when we talk about, when I go back, I harp on Miranda because that's my only way sort of segment into it, because I don't really hit a lot of criminal law with them because I don't. Some of these kids come from different backgrounds. I don't want to trigger something, you know, something bad up, but. Understanding where, again, when you can't self-regulate your emotions, when you can't check your emotions, that's where you may end up, you know, dead or in jail. And so having someone, you know, come, I think that would be great for some of these kids.
Yeah, I have somebody in mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a couple people in mind.
Okay.
One for formerly incarcerated, and then I have another company called U&50.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't want to get too distracted, but
Yeah.
just thinking of, you know, mid-interview, just thinking of people who I can introduce you to help your cause.
That would be amazing.
Of
Thank
course,
you.
of course.
Thank you.
So do you have exams within this foundation, or is it just straight learning? I mean,
So when I do like a post assessment, it's really through like a Jeopardy game.
okay.
It's really through something, because again, when we try to make it too formal like that, we may get caught up with some kids feeling like the stress, right? Anxiety. But a good educator can assess without some kids even know they're being examined, right? A mock trial is a perfect example. When we had these kids, like we were in New England and they're preparing for a mock trial. So the mock trial happened like May 2nd, I believe. May 2nd, May 3rd. And so this past weekend, they got prepared for it, writing their opening statements. What is an opening statement? We go into details about that. Middle schoolers, you need to be able to write that. You don't need to write 2-3 paragraphs, but you can give me at least a paragraph. So you have the case summary. Look at the case summary. You have the evidence. What questions do you think you need to be asking? You know, the witnesses. So when they do their mock trial, I'll be able to assess right then and there if they understood the concepts, right? And so, you know, I don't know exactly what this is called now, but back in the 90s, early 2000s, we call it performance evaluation, right? We call it performance evaluation. It's another thing. Some kids they can't do well on traditional assessments, but performance evaluations, can they sit there and perform to you what they've learned? That's a form of evaluation. You know, some kids may not be able to read because of eye issues, you know, or different issues. But if you ask them a question, if you ask them the same question that's on paper and they give you the answer, that's an evaluation, right? And so that's how I really base it on whether the kids understand the concepts. Not so much a formal test, because again, am I being inclusive to all children with disabilities? And the answer would be no.
Interesting. So with regards to these children's career trajectories, do the children who participate in your program, do they end up pursuing law in some shape, way, or form? Or do you have any type of tracking on that?
Yeah, so because we stay with them for so long, I can actually see some of the kids doing that, and they didn't start off. But another example would be one of my volunteers. So one of my volunteers, he was my team volunteer when I first started for 2 years. And he was going to go into medicine. But he was volunteering with the Legal Kid program. And his last year in high school, he said, you know what? I think I'm going to go into law. And I said, really? He said, because I thought law was just trial. I love the government, and I think I could do some amazing things with a legal degree in the government. And so now he's at Hampton University, and he says, you know, I want to go into law school. And so that's where I do see the change. And he was just a volunteer, but he was able to see through the program, being exposed to law students and other lawyers, but also learning the curriculum, that there's a place for him too, even loving history. and say, I love the government. I think I'm going to work in the government, as a lawyer. And so that honestly was my first indication of how the impact actually affects my volunteers as well. I didn't realize it then. But when he came and said it, and this boy loves STEM, medicine, he was like, I think I'm going to be a lawyer. You done changed my mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So does your program offer scholarships, or is that something that you plan on doing or want to do?
What, for college and things like that?
Yeah.
So we don't offer scholarships for that because our programming for our students are totally free. So any money that we actually raise actually goes to our own programming because we don't want any child to feel like they can't be a part of our program. So our program is free for any child, but what the exposure gives them is an opportunity to network and since we are in different universities and law schools, since we do have, partners, businesses that could give these kids a scholarship, it does open that type of door because you're giving the kids exposure at this point.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So did you talk about it in particular, your student ambassador program? Because I read on your website
everything I'm talking about is the student ambassador program. It is the student ambassadors program.
Everything that you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, it's the student ambassadors program.
Okay, so when you're a part of the Legal Kid Foundation, you're automatically a part of
You're automatically part of the student ambassadors program.
Got it. And you have two other programs.
So those
literacy and mental health?
Yep. So the literacy and mental health. The reason why I totally sort of separated on the website because I want the readers to understand the importance of it, but the literacy and the mental health is woven into the student ambassadors program through its curriculum. It is that's why I was giving you examples of Miranda, or examples of immigration, or example when we have struggling readers. Like voting is a big literacy component, right? And what we do is that we're able to show, suppose we're at a school for like their electives or something like that. We're able to show them where we hit Common Core standards. So Common Core standards is what, the Department of Education shows what each grade should be, the standards that each grade should be hitting. Our curriculum hits those standards. So I'm able to show, if I'm talking about voting, what standards it's hitting, whether it's an ELA, social studies, math, or science, because we have those STEM components also in the curriculum.
So for do you have any mental health therapists also? Yeah, okay.
So the therapists, they actually work with the students with some of our modules. So that's why I was giving you an example of Miranda. So I don't have a particular one that we just use for one section because we're in 6 different states. I have to have them in those local areas. So, here we have Brinkley Brown right here out in Apex. New England, we have a different provider. Philly, we have a different provider, and so on. And so they will actually come and work with the students. But what we have found is that some students cannot do traditional therapy. So how do we intertwine it into our curriculum where because it's not really therapy. Mental health is number one, identifying triggers, right? So that's why I said when we start talking about certain stuff, it's going to come out, right? And so what do we do? So I'll call up a licensed therapist and say, hey, this is what we're talking about. I'm noticing this. What do you think we should do? You think you come out? And so so suppose the module is 6 lessons. It may take us 9 sessions to get through because I'm starting to identify certain things, and then I'll have the therapist come out and do different activities within the modules that may not be written down, if that makes sense. Does that sort of make sense?
Could you explain it a little bit?
Okay. So suppose we have, so our modules is 6 lessons.
Okay.
Okay. So I may identify, so let me give you a heads up. I was a crisis intervention prevention master trainer. So I can sit there and I can de-escalate children. I train people on de-escalation techniques and things like that. So that's why I'm saying I can notice certain things. So what we'll do is we'll be working with students. So let's use the example with the kid why he was upset with the judge. We'll deviate off that lesson and we'll bring someone else in. If I start noticing something like a trauma or a trigger, we're going to bring somebody in there. We'll bring that, I'll call the licensed social worker, therapist in that area and say, hey, this is what I'm noticing. This is the topic that we're talking about. They'll say, okay, Dawn, and this is how we got into the assertive versus passive voice. I think we're going to come in there, we're going to do some role playing on how to deal with authority. And so instead of getting through the 6 lessons, it may take us 9 sessions to get through because we done brought the licensed therapist in 2 or 3 times to work with the students. But I have to see exactly what's going on, right? What trigger, because there's always going to be a trigger. In Philly, we had a partnership up with NAACP in February. And a kid actually left the session, said my stomach was hurting. I wasn't actually at the session. But someone, the owner called me later, the president of the NAACP called me early and said, yeah, the kid had to leave because they had some type of anxiety. It was triggering. What you're always talking about, and for bullying, it was triggering the kid. And so those are the things where this was just a pop-up. But now that I know that, when we come back there in September, I'm going to have a licensed social worker right there on the spot because more than likely that kid is going to be there or some other kids are going to be there. And so we'll be able to deviate from the lessons to talk about it because people who are really trained in crisis intervention, they can spot it right away. Kids give out warning signs. It could be, you could start seeing them go like this. They'll start getting fidgety. You know what I mean? It's the nonverbal communication that speaks. And so if you're not paying attention, you may not see it. But I always pay attention. 75% of communication is nonverbal. So I'm always watching the kid. I'm always watching how they're sitting in the chair, looking around. You know what I mean? Are they messing with their hands, going like this too many times, going like this? Those are warning signs, right? Those are warning signs. And so as soon as I see it, I'll come over, like, hey, what's going on? Nothing. I said, you sure? Why don't we come talk? Let's go take a walk, That's why the volunteers, like I said, is very important because you can't just leave all the kids, And so, but if we have a licensed social worker there, then we can be working with those kids right then and there. What's triggering? And then if you notice whatever your topic is that's triggering, or we're going to go in a little bit more detail, but in a different way, almost like through a back door to talk about it. What's really going on, maybe some interaction, some lessons. So with my lesson plans, I have all these lesson plans, but then I have all these side plans to integrate it if I had to. It's not about sticking to the script. The lessons is just a guide. You got to be able to read the room, right? You got to read the room. And if that room doesn't look good, I have all this extra stuff, right? The same thing when I'm starting to know, suppose I have a set of kids who are really struggling with some of the context or the words. I might have to deviate from that and get a different game going on to make sure I'm inclusive to those children, So you got to be able to read the room to be inclusive to all children.
So it sounds like the therapist is there on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they're on call?
So they're there on, like I said, if you want to say on call, yes. It depends on the lesson. So they're there for certain lessons. But it's not like traditional therapy. So that's why I say when we want to normalize mental health is not always just your traditional therapy. It's how do you self-regulate? And so what we're trying to do is use the particular activities that we're doing and where those kids actually envision themselves in that space. And how do you handle it when you're in that space? So like I said, I use Miranda as an example, but we can use immigration or bullying. Okay, so what happens when a kid is, saying this, and I know Miss Dawn, and they should. Okay, so what you gonna do about it? You know what I mean? What are you gonna do? And so one of the things that I sit there and I say in these lessons when we start empowering the victim, I'll say, I know there may be some bullies in here, but now you understand that the victims are in power and everybody can go to their parents, and then their parents may go to the police and charge you. So I'm able to show them that too, that these victims are going to be empowered, but you may be getting a call from the police. So it's really dealing with looking at what activity we're doing, what lesson we're doing, and how do we integrate that social emotional part. How do we sit there and say, because too many times people think mental health is, oh, I'm just so severely depressed, or I'm bipolar, or no, poverty is real, right? Which can lead to a lot of depression, bullying. So just taking things that kids are dealing with every single day and normalizing and say, it's okay to feel. It's how you deal with it. How are you handling that? Okay. And so using our lessons is important. So let me give you another example. So one of our mock trials was a middle schooler, and it was under unreasonable search and seizure. So we have a kid who's used to getting in trouble in school. The teacher usually coming down on this kid all the time. The teacher got fed up that day and went in the kid's backpack. And they went in the backpack and they found something that the kid shouldn't have had. I don't remember what, a Walkman. I mean, a Walkman is old, but it was something where they shouldn't have had in the school setting. And the teacher went and reported and wanted to get the kid expelled. So the parents sued and said it was unreasonable search or seizure. And it started showing, and at that time, we were right here at Campbell Law, we had not only parents there, but we did have a mental health therapist there. We had kids there. We had a teacher there. And so even when the children were deliberating for the jury, we had a panel discussion and a lawyer was there to be able to show even the teacher or principals that children have rights, right? Just because a kid may be misbehaving, doesn't give you the right to infringe on their Fourth Amendment right. There's laws behind that. And so I hope I'm answering this correctly, but we try to integrate the mental health, the literacy, all in one lesson, if that makes sense. Being able kids say, okay, we understand that the teacher was wrong. We understand that the teacher may look down upon you, but you don't have a right to be disrespectful to the teacher, right? There is something called the rule of law, and you go talk to your parents. You can talk to, different people with different law clinics, and there's a court system. So we're trying to show the kids the pathway, because, and I believe in therapy. I do. I believe in therapy. But we also have the kids show the kids a way to get their voice heard. So, because when kids don't feel like their voices are heard, this is when you start to see them misbehave in school. When they start getting in trouble in school, whether it's fighting or whether it's I give up on my grades, nobody cares. We have to turn maybe some parts of traditional therapy into something that they can understand and they can gain the concept better. Because now they understand it while they're having fun. Sometimes kids just don't want you looking at them saying, well, what did you do and what should we talk about? Versus if you're talking about it in a general sense, right? It's a general sense having an activity. They're listening though, they're learning, and they trust you because they're constant. It's another thing. You have to be the constant. Kids won't trust anything you're saying, because if you're just a one-timer, why would I listen to anything you have to say? Or are you going to really be around? But when you build relationships with these kids and say, you know what, Miss Dawn or Mr. John over there, you know what, they will never steer me wrong because they always show up. They're not going to steer me wrong. I'm going to listen to what they have to say. I'm going to listen to what their friends say. One of the things I always say, how I redirect kids, I started off when I first meet them. And then I say it every time I see them. And then when I need to redirect them, I say it again. I said, listen, I'm going to respect you. And their faces are like this. What are you talking about? You should, I mean, every time, you should see the shock on their face. They be like, I said, I'm going to respect you. And I said, because I'm not going to ask anything from you that I'm not willing to give to you. But in return, I'm going to need you to respect me, right? My friends, you know, my things, and each other. I start off with it every time. And it's amazing when you tell kids that you're going to respect them first. They're like, you know what? She sees me. She sees that I deserve to be heard. My voice matters. My feelings matter. You're developing a bond right there because they're going to begin to trust you. And when kids begin to trust you, they'll listen to you, right? You'll say, you know what? When I sit there and see so-and-so and I want to do this, Ms. Dawn said don't do that. And I'm going to trust what she said. You know why? Because she respects me. She cares about me. She gave me something before I gave her anything. She gave me respect first. And she didn't even know me. People who know me all my life don't respect me. My teachers don't respect me. My friends don't respect me. But Ms. Dawn and her friends respect me. And they respect me before I respected them. It's amazing what that does. It's amazing all the barriers that start to break down just by that statement. So that's what I'm teaching them. I'm teaching them the respect factor. You know, I'm teaching them that they deserve to be respected. And so that's why I'm looking at a mental health and social emotion from a totally different perspective, right? I'm looking at it from a kid's perspective. You know, you and I were older. Hey, we sit there and talk about therapy. It's been a hard day at work today. Can we talk about it? But kids, they see it differently. We gotta come into their world. And when you start talking about I respect you, I hear you, I see you, it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. But it's not okay to walk away from the teacher. You know what I mean? You know, you validate their feelings. You know, you validate them. Say, yeah, I hear you. I feel that pain you're feeling. Oh my goodness, it was horrible. But do you think you could have did that a different way? Like, how do you think that might have made that person feel, that teacher feel? You know? And one of the things we do with role playing again is that even with police, we do it where you have, and I never let the children be the suspect. I don't ever want to put that in their head at all, right? So the volunteer, someone else has to be the suspect. And so the kids have to, it's two ways. So we have where the first case, not the first case, well, the first scenario is where the volunteer or the suspect is being just irrational, not listening. They're being pulled over for a traffic stop. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'm not listening. I don't care. And they have to put them in handcuffs and the person's fighting them and everything else like that. And then we do it where the person is very compliant. And then we sit down with them and we say, well, how did you feel from this scenario versus this scenario? And I said, did you see how did you ever feel threatened when that person's going in their pocket or screaming at you or yelling at you? You don't know the person. When they're reaching for something. And it gives them a perspective of, from a police officer standpoint, that when you may be right. I'm not saying you're not right. But when you have someone who doesn't know you and you're yelling and screaming, you're going in your pockets, you're going everywhere else, you know, maybe that person is scared, you know? And so when you understand your rights and say, you know what, I do have the right to remain silent, I think you should use it, right? And just be compliant. Because if you truly believe in the rule of law, you know that it's going to work out. You don't have to fight. Fighting authority, you're not going to win. Whether it's a police officer, whether it's a principal, whether it's your parent, you're not going to win that battle. So don't try to fight it. Don't fight against authority. Not in that way. Fight it through the rule of law. And so that's what we try to teach them. Your voice is there, but there's a way you do it. And you can come off threatening. And when you come off threatening, yelling, nobody's going to hear you. Just imagine me and you yelling at somebody. You think they're really going to hear what we have to say? Or they only going to hear us screaming at them, right? And so that's what we just try to teach the kids from that social emotional piece of look at it from a different point of view. And how would you feel? Don't you want to go home tonight? You know what I mean? That principal doesn't know what you're going through. Did you communicate that? Did you communicate all that you're going through at home? Did you say anything? Or you just coming yelling and screaming at the principal? You know? You have to take a step back. And it comes back to respect. Respect yourself. And respect the people around you. So that's why it always goes back to my first statement to them. And that trickles down on how they interact with each other. So when the kids start getting all wound up, I don't yell at them. I say, hey, friends. I'm like, hey. I said, I'm not feeling respected. What we gonna do? Miss Dawn, we gonna respect you. I mean, you gonna respect us, and then we gonna go ahead and respect you. And each other, and your friends, and your stuff. and that's how I redirect them. Because I keep pushing respect, respect, respect.
So when it comes to the respect factor and getting the best output from students, is that something that you always knew going into being the co-founder, executive director of the Legal Kid Foundation, or is that something that you had to learn through trial and error, holding that position and saying, okay, you know what, maybe I need to start off by respecting them first?
I will always respect children. And
so
I've always had that feeling because kids' voices need to be heard. You have to go back and see why. I will always say, I don't believe any child is bad. Children live with trauma. Kids come from different backgrounds, different obstacles. And their environment creates who they are, right? They're children. And so when you see it from that perspective, you come in the door differently. You come in and saying, you know what? If they're behaving that way, there's something wrong, right? And so and this, I think is just coming back from that crisis intervention training, like when you want to de-escalate a situation, you don't come in there with guns blazing. It will never work. It will never work. It will never work. You have to come in through the back door. You have to come in, you know, as the person saying, hey, what's the matter? What's going on? You know, because you're trying to bring them down, right? If you're here and they're here, no one's coming down, right? No one's coming down. You also need to know when to engage and when to hang back. Sometimes you can't have that conversation right then and there. You just have to hang back and ensure safety, right? Is that kid safe? And then wait and see. A lot of times people want to say, well, I'm the adult and I think this and I think that. Children are humans and they're people and they should be respected that way. Okay, they need to be seen and heard and felt. Their feelings matter, you know, and if you look at it from that perspective, right, you would see that you need to respect them. Even just looking at my own children, you know, it's a respect factor, right? Do I get upset with them? Yeah, I can get upset with them, but they know I respect them. You know, I don't have to do a lot of hollering and screaming with them. Because we have a relationship. Building those relationships with children are essential. You can't discipline if you don't have a relationship, right? You gotta have a relationship. You gotta have a bond. Because when you have that bond and that relationship, everything is here. But if you come in all the time as that authority figure, you may be winning that little war right now, but what's gonna happen in 5, 6, 7 years? They're not going to like you. They're not going to respect you. They're not going to listen to anything you have to say. Because now they're going to say, well, I'm in power. I don't have to listen. I'm big and bad now, you know. But when you have a relationship and you have that bond with them, when it really, really matters, they're going to listen to you. And so that's what I want to do with these children and my team wants to do with these children because we're in here for the long run. We're not here for, okay, we're just here this one time and I'll see you later. We want to be here to get them through to 12th grade, right? How can we sit there and get you there? How can we mentor you? And so the reason why we start in third grade is because, I know we talked about it on the phone that time, is because that's when they established the school to prison pipeline. This is where we go here. The prisons are determined on that third grade reading test. Okay, third grade reading test in every state they take. That's how they establish how many prisons they're going to build. So kids still in third grade are still very easy to redirect. We got to get them there. We got to build the relationships there. But so by the time they get to that 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, when their hormones are going and they want to listen, you've already established that relationship. They're going to listen to you. You know, you already have that bond with them, right? And after that, you got to hold on to them then. I'm telling you, that 5th through that 8th grade, you got to hold on tight. You got to hold on tight. When you get to 9th grade, I think you're out of the rough patch because you held that middle school age so tight. Now 9th grade, what you going to do in life? Can we work with some internships? What are we doing here? What pathway are we going, right? That's why we have, again, we have the volunteers with the law students. We have the universities there. We have the law firms. These people are mentoring these kids, saying, hey, you want to go to this school? They're already at university, at the schools. You want to do a tour? Let's go to the library. Let's see what it's about. Maybe you talk to a admissions director. So we're already directing them. Hey, you don't want to go to school? What, you want to be an entrepreneur? You want to go to trade school? That's great too. What you want to do? Where can we find you to do something? But it's almost where we got to get them, establish that relationship at 3rd, 4th grade. So by the time when we get them critical ages, we have that bond and we can hold them. Because remember, they're not forced to come and see us. But if you have that relationship and bond, they'll be like, you know what, I don't feel like going, but I guess I'll go over there and see Miss Dawn and her friends, you know. Because at that age, they don't have to come. But they come. They come because they want to come. And so after that, high school, now we're preparing them for whatever career they may want to have.
Interesting. So this is just a random thought, but I would like to ask, would you think of incorporating a self-defense class? Would you think that would be appropriate?
So tell me more about self-defense.
So, you know, you talked about, you know, certain situations where people are up here and you don't want to, you know, match their level of intensity.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you know, situations can get out of hand that we can't control.
Yeah.
And yes, there's weapons, but some people will resort to physical violence. And just making sure that the students are equipped to protect themselves in certain situations. I know it doesn't have to deal, it doesn't really deal with law, but just in the world that we live in, I mean,
yeah.
If the answer is no, it's no.
No,
I mean,
honestly, I never thought about that. I really have to think about that. I never thought about that because you're right. Sometimes we're living in a dangerous situation. And I can see it from a perspective. You're saying, well, you know what? If you're equipping them with self-defense, maybe they won't turn to a weapon. Maybe they'll know that they're really equipped if they had to handle the situations, that they'll go back old school and just handle it, you know, the way we did, versus, you know, using a knife or a gun. And so that's something that I really have to think about because I never thought about it from that perspective. But you're right, the world that we're living in, it's
a dangerous world.
Extremely dangerous, and maybe this will also help deviate the need to get a gun, you know, to get a weapon, bring knives to school.
Because normally people who get weapons are people who can't defend themselves.
Exactly, they are. And it made me think about it. It was this case, I won't say where it was, but you might know where it is, but this kid was being bullied in high school. And he just got tired. And he brought, and it's not like this, the school knew. The school knew. He brought a knife to school. And you can see it on the video where these kids jumped this kid. Jumped him bad. And he ended up pulling out the knife and stabbing that kid who jumped him. I mean, he was laying on the ground. He stabbed him. And then you had one kid that's dead. And you have the other kid who's being hit with murder. And you're right. Maybe if he knew how to fight, he wouldn't have had to say, you know what, let me bring a gun. I mean, not a gun, a knife to school. Maybe the outcome could have been different, right? So that's something that, you know, I might need to think about that. I didn't even see it from that perspective ever. I didn't think about it, but I think that's a very good perspective to see it from at this point. Bringing that case up.
Not a problem, not a problem. And I just want to make sure that the Legal Kid Foundation, it aligns with the school year. So like there's no programs in the summer?
We do have programs over the summer.
So it's a full...
Yeah, 4 year. It depends on the location. Like, so for Dayton, Ohio, we're doing a summer camp out there, probably last week in June. We did do some other summer camps the last few years up in Raleigh. But yeah, I think Dayton is the only one doing the summer camp. But it's not that if someone asked us to do it or if they needed it, we would do it.
Okay, okay. And you talked about the class sizes. You said 1 volunteer for every 4 students?
Yeah, 1 every 4.
4. So how big are the class sizes normally?
So the class size is no more than 30 ever.
No more than 30.
No more than 30. Usually
So
we're
you-
at 20.
So what? You have, 7 volunteers and 1 teacher?
Yeah, 7 volunteers, 1 teacher. Sometimes I have even more volunteers. Sometimes I have more volunteers than kids. It all depends, because the law students, they sign up, right? They sign up. They say, I want to help. I want to be a part of it. And so, give you an example. We did a rock the vote at Campbell Law School this fall, and so it had to be 25, 30 volunteers, but we did need them because some of them. We had different stations. And so one of the stations that we did was it was a scavenger hunt. And within this scavenger hunt, there was different spaces. So we needed all those volunteers to man the stations. Does that make sense? So it actually, depending on what we're working on, we do need even more than that. But yeah, we usually have a good amount of volunteers, which is great,
Which is very good, especially with the work that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I just want to make sure that I heard it correctly. You are a nonprofit?
We're a nonprofit.
Okay, okay.
501c3, yes.
Awesome, awesome. So talk about some of your achievements that you've successfully accomplished.
We've achieved so many great things. Like I stated, it's only been 3 years. We started January 2022, and to enter into this, not trying to grow is big. I was just always this small little after school, and to be able to have the impact of over 1,300 kids in 6 different states, being able to have these partnerships with law school. So I developed that all through, as I went on. It wasn't something that I started off with. And so we just started seeing the need. Wow, what if some law students would come and work with the kids? Wouldn't that be incredible? What if we brought in some more judges or more attorneys, And so being able to see how that has grown was incredible. We did just get our first community service award in Dayton, Ohio. So I'm looking forward to that. That's in May. Thank you. It's from the Links in Dayton. So I'm excited about that. Being able to see, like, we're celebrating Law Day in Philadelphia, the birthplace of the Constitution. Law Day is May 1st, so that's a big thing for lawyers and the law people, but we're going to be doing that in Philly. But being able to see how much we've grown, but the impact on the kids, honestly, that is the achievement. To be able to look at some of my kids, I call them my kids, I make it personal, but that started 3 years ago. It's just to see how much they've grown, like from 3rd grade to 6th grade, seeing how much some of their behaviors have curved and changed, seeing how they're able to advocate for themselves more appropriately. To me, that's honestly the best achievement, because now I know I make an impact, and then I would say to some of the kids, like, hey, so after they could choose robotics club, they could choose golf, they could choose anything. I said, and you would just see them come in, just walking into my class, like, oh my God, you're here again every semester. And they would just be walking in, and they was like, Miss Thorne, we saw your name, we coming back. I was like, oh my God, yeah. And I just couldn't believe it. I mean, they had so many great other options, and they always chose the legal kid. And I was just like, wow. And that's what I'm saying, I became their constant. When some programs wouldn't show up, and I'd be calling the people like, hey, your program hasn't been here for a couple of weeks. But I took the kids in, And so some of the kids who never signed up for my program, I took them in. And they end up loving the program because I saw them walking around like, well, you have a place here? You want to come over here with us? You know, and being able to see now, then they will come back too. That's the greatest impact. That's the greatest impact, to see those precious, brilliant minds, you know, and seeing them evolve and seeing that our foundation made an impact on their life. Honestly, that's the best achievement, best milestone that we could ever have.
Wow. So you mentioned 6 states. You're in 6 states.
Yes.
So what's the timeline? What was the first?
So Raleigh is the first.
Raleigh's the first.
Raleigh's the first. Then we hit Philadelphia, the Philadelphia, Wilmington. That's all very like connected. So Wilmington and Delaware. Delaware is, you know, Philly. And then we hit San Francisco. So that's California. We started in New England, Springfield, Massachusetts, last January. And then we expanded to Dayton, Ohio this January. And then we're going to go to Toronto this fall.
So Raleigh and Philadelphia make sense.
Yes.
Why the other locations?
The other locations was really the law schools. The law schools really, so we're at Western New England School of Law in Springfield, Massachusetts. So that's where our partner is. And so they wanted to do a dynamic program for students. And so my partnership with Lexus actually helps me find these different schools because Lexus is in a lot of the law schools. They have reps in there. And so that's how I became connected. The same thing with Dayton, the University of Dayton, School of Law. Toronto is going to be the same thing, the University of Toronto. They have a law school there. But it's all my connections with Lexus that has helped foster it. And give you an example of, okay, I'm going to Philly, Law Day. I'll just say, hey, Lexus, I'm going to do a law day in Philly. They say, oh, I got a rep right there. I got your volunteers all ready to go. You know, they put me in contact with this gentleman. He's full of great energy. Okay, Dawn, I got some swag. I'm recruiting. I'm going to Temple Law to recruit the volunteers. And so then I'll get the volunteers from Temple Law, but then I have my Lexus volunteers. And so that's how I'm able to really, really expand and make the impact and also keep the cost low because we want to make sure that it's free. You know, I understand that people say, you know, you can put scholarships on there, but you know what? Some people are very, you know, they don't want people to know that they need a scholarship. And so we don't want any barriers for these kids to participate. So if we're able, like I said, to really sit there and get these volunteers, it keeps our costs down low, you know, because we're able to maximize. So law, they were hitting 90 students in one elementary school. We're going to do 90 fourth graders, work with those kids all day, doing different activities, but it's totally free for the school. And they're able to experience an amazing day of learning legal literacy and doing some STEM exercises.
Wow. So do you frequently travel to the different sites?
I do. Some of them I do travel. I don't travel with all of them all the time. So, but Law Day, I will be doing that one.
To Philadelphia?
Yeah, I'll be doing that for Philadelphia. And then I'll be going up to New England so that's Thursday. And that Saturday, we're going to New England because we're closing out for the year. So I do want to be there to say, you know, the kids did an amazing, good job. We have some gifts for them. It's almost like their little mini graduation. So I'll be there, but I haven't been up there since I think January or December.
Okay. And you want to discuss some of the long-term plans, 5 to 10-year plans?
Yes. So our long-term plans is truly try to saturate the U.S. market. We're going to do Canada, probably do the UK next year, but really, really saturate the U.S. market. I want every kid to know that they matter and they have a place at the table. But we have to show you how to have a place at the table, okay? You can't just go to everybody's table acting any type of way. You need to know the table etiquette, right? And so that's where we come in. But what I really see is continue to foster my relationships with these law schools. these law firms in every location and saturated. Because when we empower our kids, right, we're going to see this generation become so different than what we think they can become. You know, you're going to see not just lawyers, but, you know, some of these kids can get into politics, right? Yeah. Some of these kids could be social workers and counselors, right? The sky is the limit, but we have to be able to show them, you know, and let them experience it and let them have fun experience it. You know, one of the things, the reason why I really push the free notion is that I do have kids. So my kids are right now 12 and 13 years old. But I started it when they were small. Like my kids are actually the figures on the curriculum. Like they, you know, these people take the kids out for learning. My kids are one, they show them. And it's very expensive to get your kids in good programming. It's extremely expensive. And I saw it. I saw when I would start doing programming, when I first started out. And I don't want to say the company's name, but there was an after-school program that was, my kid attended their site-based program. But I was at the school, at this after-school program, and it was very different. I couldn't believe it was the same program. But they were giving these other kids that's free. I was like, what is this? Like you would even see where these kids get things from the dollar store. Nothing wrong with the dollar store. I don't give my kids anything at the dollar store. Whatever I would give my kids at home, I'm buying these kids. Because I want them to know that it matters. Like you are important. Kids know. Kids know when you're just giving them anything, right? But I see the difference. I'm telling you I see the difference. From free to non-free, and it's the same company. And I'm like, I'm not going to be that person. I remember it was a celebration at one of the after schools, and none of the other vendors did anything for the kids. And they were like, you know, Miss Dawn, we're going to have to cancel it because the other vendors didn't know. I said, well, I'm not doing it. Every year you said we're doing something. I had my own party. I went out and bought some good pizza. Not no cheap. I ain't go to Little Caesars. I went to a real pizza space. I got me some real pizza for these kids. We got real cupcakes. I got tablecloths to put on there. I made a whole video for the kids of what they've accomplished. I gave them gifts and everything else like that. You know why? Because I have a standard for them. It doesn't matter. It's called integrity. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. It matters what you're doing. You got to be true to yourself. And so just because they're not going to celebrate these kids, we were going to celebrate these kids. And we want to celebrate the way we celebrate things, right? And so, but that is the reason why I have to be free. Because, like I said, you can have those programs in there. I'm telling you right now, very different. It was disgusting. And I said, I don't care how this economy works. We're going to still stay with the same standard. And we're going to still give the same kids the quality things that they deserve. So whatever I give my own children at home, I'm giving to these kids. If I ain't feeding my kids that stuff, I ain't feeding these kids that stuff. If I'm not giving my kids these cheap prizes, I'm not giving them these cheap prizes. And so that's how we conduct our business, is that, you know, we try to show up for these kids. You know, a lot of times people think if some kids are living in poverty, that parents, you know, that's what they want. Parents are just trying to make ends meet, you know. I grew up in a town where there's a village. And, you know, you got parents working 2-3 jobs. They tired. They may not have the resources to be able to give those kids that, you know. So we're going to be the village. We're going to be that constant for those parents, you know, and say, hey, we're with you. You know, your kid deserves the quality too. You can't help, people can't help their circumstance. They can't help if they don't have a lot of money. Does that mean that their kid shouldn't have quality programming? You know, they shouldn't have an equal playing field to be exposed to universities and lawyers. And you think about that. If you have money, you can pay $200, $300, $500. I'm telling you how much it is to get your kids in these programs. Some of the programs my kid may get in for a STEM activity for 4 weeks is almost $300. on a Saturday for 3 hours, right? So what happens with these kids? They're not getting the same opportunities. And so if my kid can get all these things growing up and these kids aren't getting that, what do you think happens when they get up to middle school and high school? They're going to feel like they can't do it because they're looking at these other kids who are way up here with all the exposure, all the experience, everything, and they don't have that. And so that's why for me, it's important for it to be free, where parents don't have to feel bad if they want to have to, apply for financial aid and stuff like that. Oh, they can still, everybody can come, right? They don't feel as though that they're being targeted with a financial aid application. Everybody know that's, the kids know it. My kids will call it, that's the scholarship kid. That's what they call it. That's the scholarship kid. I don't want any kid to be the scholarship kid. I want all kids to be included. Nobody gonna know nobody's background, how much money they got. Nobody needs to know that. It's an equal playing field, equal opportunity, equal exposure. And so that's what we do with the Legal Kid Foundation. But a lot of people don't realize how expensive it is.
Oh, I bet.
To expose these kids. That's why I gave you the example. My kid just did it. STEM activity. It was only 3 hours for 4 weeks. It was like $300. And if you barely making ends meet the cost of groceries, doesn't mean that you don't want your kids to participate. You just can't afford it. That's not equal. And so when they get to middle school, high school, they're already, that's the setup I keep talking about. There's a setup. They're not, this kid is here, this kid is here. And so this kid's like, I can't achieve that. Look at all that stuff they've been exposed to. Look at all that stuff that they did. What do you think they're seeing on the college applications? Oh, look at all the experience that this kid has been in. All the exposure, all this, all that. Doesn't mean this kid didn't want to have it. They couldn't afford it. I want those kids to say, hey, I have all this on my application too. I'm just as smart. Somebody saw me. I did an intern. Now I'm in high school. I'm getting part of the program. I'm meeting different lawyers and different business owners. I'm doing internships with their company so they can put that on their college applications, right? That's the equal playing field I'm talking about. I want to give these kids the equal playing field.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
No, seriously, beautiful. I mean, anyone will be more receptive and more positive in a nurturing environment. Yeah. And unfortunately, you have foundations, organizations who try to cut corners with cost. But yeah, you're saving money on this end, but the whole purpose of you running this organization is failing.
Yeah.
And it's almost a waste of time for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And honestly, that's why I love your space. I love how, and I'm pleased if I quote it wrong, how you state where, you have the Oprah Winfrey's, but there are other businesses out there, foundations out there that you give people like us a voice, right? You give us a platform. Because other people may say, well, that's just a small little nonprofit. They're not really doing anything. It's the same thing that I'm noticing in the space with these nonprofits. I won't name them, but a lot of them get a lot of money. And I am telling you, I'm there. So remember, I'm a vendor with them in these after school programs or these other things. These kids aren't getting half of what they're promoting. And it's like, I can't believe.
Are they pocketing the money?
No, because you have that high administrative costs. You have to pay all these people at the top. So one thing about me, I don't even take a salary. I know everybody can't do that, but I don't even take a salary for myself. But some parts of it, I don't know where the money's going. I'm being honest, but I don't know. I don't know if it's pocketing, but what I can say, I'm not joking with you. It's very disturbing on how much money some of these large nonprofits are getting and the quality of programming that's coming out. It's unbelievable to me. I mean, I am shocked. And I'm like, oh my God, you're getting all this money, you're gonna get this kid this. You're not even doing anything with the kids, You're not doing anything, So that's why I say for me, I've learned to say, you know what, if I can leverage my volunteers, cut down all those administrative, all those costs, leverage that. continue to foster 30 kids at a time. I don't need a whole big number of kids. So you can have a lot of kids, but you have no quality. I'd rather have quality versus quantity, right? So I'm gonna have the quality. They actually charge some of these kids, you know what I mean? Some of these, I won't say name who they are, but they charge a little bit of money for these kids. When you have quality and you're able to leverage great volunteers who want to be a part of it, who need the pro bono hours anyway, and they want to say, you know what, I want to be a part of this mission because I see the value. I can see, when you come work with these kids, you can see the impact right away. You'll see it, and so they want to be a part of that, right? And so being able to leverage that and giving quality programming that without a doubt you're making an impact, that's what we're here for. This over here, I mean it's, I don't know where all the money is, I don't know what's happening, but it was disturbing to me when I really started seeing it. And I think that's what I always have in the back of my mind, that I'm never going to be that. If I have to be slow and steady, where I don't grow as fast, or I'm only having this amount of kids, but these amount of kids are being impacted versus having a huge amount of kids, and they're walking away with nothing, right? I'm able to say, I'm going to stick with you and grow with you. I'm going to position you to be with these other kids who have money. That's where the impact is going to go. And so that's where my focus is right there. But I try to stay humble because I have in the back of my mind. So I'm glad for the experiences because I now know what I don't want to be. I don't want to be that. And so even as the economy changes, I may have to change certain things, but I'm never going to be that. And I know people say never, no, I'm never going to be that. Because I'm doing this because the love that I have for children, I'm not doing it for money. I don't even pay myself. I'm doing it because I want to make an impact. Like I always tell my kids is that when you get to a certain point, and no, I'm not rich by no point, but I'm okay. You always go back. You always go back and you pull people up with you. You be a service to people. You love on people. And so my kids, even at 12, 13, they started volunteering younger than that. My daughter went with me to Dayton to open my Dayton program. They are there, and I don't beg them. They started saying, I want to be a part of it. I want to go work with those kids. I want to be a part of that mission. They're modeling the behaviors that I'm showing them. That, you know what, you can be doing very well in all the other things you're doing, but you always have to be a service to God's people. You always got to love on people and help other people, you know what I mean, and pull them up as you go up. And that's really important to me. And so it's so good to be able to see now my kids at 12 and 13, that foundation has already been planted, and I see them doing it in their own way.
Absolutely. Well, with your business model and your perspective on how to nurture and just bring up children, I see why you're making such great moves in such a short amount of time. I mean, 3 years, so Toronto will be 7?
Our 7th location.
And you're already thinking about the UK?
The UK next year.
Yeah, you're the moon and above. No, seriously, because you don't really hear a lot about this type of intentionality when it comes to wanting the best for our youth.
Yes.
People treat a business like a business.
Yes.
And like you kind of talked about other nonprofits, how they handle their business, but this is very, like you said, you're not trying to move fast. You want to move correctly. You want to move intentionally.
Yes.
And that's how you make the impact.
Yes.
People want the numbers. Yeah, I have 10 sites all around the world or whatever. But no, if you have one site,
yes,
but 95, 98% of the kids are coming back, joyful and happy. That's what matters, not how many. It's
exactly
the impact.
It's
absolutely.
the impact. It's looking at, and I call them my brilliant young minds. You'll see, I say they are brilliant. They are beautiful. When you see them, and you can peep into their future. I'm not looking at today. I'm looking at 5 years from now. I'm like, man, thank you for let me be a part of that journey, you know, to be able to see their growth. You know, I don't take it lightly that I'm in this position to make this type of impact. I look at every kid, that was my kid. That was my kid. And I was in certain circumstances that I couldn't give that. How would I want somebody to treat my kid? And that's how I look at every single child. Every single child, I look at them as that was my child. How would I want somebody to treat my kid? You know, and how would I want them to love on them if, God forbid, I wasn't here and we didn't have the resources? Would I want someone to pull them up and feed into their soul and make them be the best version of themselves? Of course I would. And so that's how I treat everybody else's kid. You know, I treat them just like that. They're brilliant.
So on the topic of growth, you know, we talked about how you came into the Legal Kid Foundation with the respect factor. You came into the Legal Kid Foundation with the constant factor, you know, being constant and being available, being present to these kids so that they can be more receptive to what you have to offer. And it sounds like you came in as well, treating the kids, these children, how you would treat your own children. So you came in to Legal Kid Foundation already fully equipped with that type of attitude. But how have you grown? What is a part of you that was a little rusty or maybe not apparent that you were able to evolve in through being the executive director, co-founder?
Yeah, I can tell you. I can tell you, fundraising.
Yeah, I hear this a lot. Yeah.
But you know, it's one thing having a passion and love for what you do. It's another point of really hitting things that are hard for you. So I am used to, if my kid is having a fundraiser at the school or whatever, I used to tell all the people, I don't fundraise. This is what I'm telling you. How much popcorn you need for my kid to make it? I'll buy all the popcorn. I'll buy all the cookies. The girl cookies. How many cookies I need to buy? I'm gonna buy that. I'm not asking anybody for any money. That was me. Literally, that was me. And I tried it for a little while, for the first year and a half with the foundation, and then I couldn't do it because I was growing so fast. And it was very, very uncomfortable. It was beyond uncomfortable. And so we actually had our first big fundraiser last year. It was a golf invitational at Lonnie Pool at NC State. Now, my daughter golfs, I don't golf. So I called myself to do this golf invitational. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. But I need sponsors. Oh, my God. I got to ask people. I got to get people for tickets. I will sit here and say, John, it nearly took me out. Like, it was literally, I got to a point where I was like, this is where you know you're at the road. And I said, I can't do this anymore. Oh my God, I can't do this. I can't be asked. I can't do this. And all I kept thinking about was those brilliant young minds. And I was like, you gotta do it for them. Like, literally, that's what pushed me. That's what kept pushing me to be uncomfortable and pushing me just to push. And I finally got to the point, okay, we're finally at this golf event. I'll never do this again. It was the hurricane. Does everybody remember that Hurricane Helene? Mm-hmm. It happened on that day.
Oh.
I was almost over the threshold. I was almost like, okay, I'm done. And the hurricane came the same day as the golf event. Yes, that's exactly how I was looking too.
Wow.
I said, oh my God, I'm never going to catch a break. like literally. And so, and then they wouldn't cancel it just yet because they're like, no one closes down the golf course. I'm like, oh my God. So I couldn't cancel it. And so we arrived that Friday morning, winds blowing, putting stuff out there. Honestly, it was the best thing I ever did. Like, it was the best thing I ever did. I had these golfers coming up to me, hugging me. Thank you so much for not canceling. I told you I was not a golfer, right? So out of all the people that came, I only knew 3 people. I promoted that thing. I don't know where they all came from, and I'm so grateful that they came. I only knew 3 people. And so when you start thinking about being uncomfortable, honestly, that was the most uncomfortable feeling I've ever felt, because it was fundraising. It was golf. My daughter goes, I don't know golf. But I learned. I learned to be a fundraiser person. I did. I learned it, and I mastered it. One of my friends said, Dawn, look at this as being an event planner or a party. Now I can plan a party. Oh, I can plan a party. And so when I looked at it from that aspect, I had all the decorations, the great food. I had the ambiance. And I said, this is how we have to look at this, right? I took my daughter to Paris for our birthday in August. I took her for my birthday. I just need somebody to come along, so I brought her with me. And she loves this Dior store. So we get there. It's my birthday. I'm like, I ain't buying nothing. We can walk over there, but I am not buying anything. Let me tell you something. I walked in there. Dior, that's the day I fell in love with Dior. It was the experience. I walked out there buying stuff for her. she didn't know it. She didn't know it. But it was the experience. The experience sold me. You know what I'm saying? That's why I said it's the day I fell in love with Dior. And I said, that was in August. That's what I have to do for this golf invitational. I have to create the experience. That's what's going to get people to come back, right? And so I created an experience, even though it was the middle of a hurricane. We went out there for 1 hour. These people loved it. There was a rain. They were like, yeah. I'm like, you're crazy. But I'm out here too. I had an amazing time at this event. I had amazing people that came and supported this event. Even though it rained out, Lonnie Poole gave them passes to come back. We had great food. We had great breakfast. Like, I didn't just do them box lunches. We had a full barbecue. We had barbecue chicken, all types of for lunch. We had a full breakfast. I created experience. And these people were like, oh my God, we had a blast. I'm like, oh my God, you did? Yeah, I'm back next year. Like, you know what I mean? Sign me up. And that's when I realized that it was worth it. And what honestly pushed me was those kids. It wasn't about any money. It wasn't about the numbers. It was about, how can I walk away from the relationships, the promise of being there constant, because I'm really uncomfortable and I'm really doing something that I don't want to do. How can I walk away from those kids? I gave them my word, right? I gave them my word. And where I'm from, your word means everything, you know? And so I was pushing a very, very uncomfortable, beyond uncomfortable experience that the hurricane just totally, I was already breaking, that totally broke me apart, but I made it through. And now seeing the impact from the money we raised, but also expanding into Dayton a few months later, going into Toronto, you know what I mean? Expanding even in all my markets that I'm already in. It showed me how strong I really am when I'm very, very uncomfortable and I don't want to do it. It showed me that I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in what I'm doing because there's no way that I could walk away from the promises that I made those kids. I am not going to be that person that will have them say, see, we can't trust her either. Mm-hmm. She's just another person that let us down, who gave her word and walked away because it was hard. We weren't enough, right? We weren't enough. We didn't matter enough to her. Because that's what kids go through, right? When people are taught, they don't mind, I'm just leaving. I seen it. I told you one of the after school programs, the company didn't come back after spring break. And I'm holding these kids crying. I really like the program. Why didn't they want to come back and work with us? And I'm holding these kids while they're crying, while these people just walked out on the kids. I could never be that person. That's why I say some of the experience that I saw early made sure in the back of my mind that I could never do. I saw the impact that happened on those kids. I wasn't going to do that. So that's how I grew. Something very uncomfortable for me, even personally. I still wouldn't ask anybody for money for my kids. You know what I mean? I still wouldn't. But when it comes to this foundation, it's not about me or about my kids. This is about a promise and a commitment that I made to those brilliant young minds that the foundation was going to be their constant. And how dare we walk away when it's uncomfortable? They live in uncomfortable worlds every day. They still got to make it through. You know, why can't we be really uncomfortable and show up for them and show them that there are people out there, there are companies out there that aren't going to give up on you. You know, it's a teachable moment even for them as they get older. They don't give up on yourself. Always be there for yourself at least, even when it's uncomfortable.
On the other side of being uncomfortable is always growth.
Yes,
Always.
I grew a lot. I grew a lot. And I'm proud of it, but it was very, very hard for me. That was very hard.
So is that your one and only fundraiser?
So we have another one this year. Guess what? I'm doing a golf event.
Oh, the same?
Doing a golf event. It's going to be November 7th, though. I'm out of hurricane season. I had to be out of hurricane season. I couldn't live that again. But yeah, it's going to be here again at Lonnie Pool. I really believe that we'll double our numbers this year. But if you talked to me a year ago or not even a few months back before this golf event, I would have told you I would never do this again. But like you said, it's growth. When you come out on the other side and you see that you made it through, but you see that the impact that you made, you're saying, okay, I can do this again. And it's so worth it. And that's what I see now is that this event is so worth it. Because how many other kids are we going to be able to impact with that?
Absolutely. So, before we end today's interview, do you have any lasting comments that you would like to say to the audience? Any lasting comments about the Legal Kid Foundation or yourself? I mean, anything that comes to mind that you want to leave the audience with?
I will say that everybody has a purpose. We all have the power to make a difference in this world. And we can look at, example could be Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy was a shoemaker, right? He was a shoemaker. He made an impact. Dr. King was a minister. He made an impact. To make impact, you don't have to be some millionaire or billionaire. You can make an impact just being who you are and using the talent, just like what you're doing. Right? You're using your platform to help foundations or companies, things like that may not have a voice on the main stage to be heard, to have a voice out there, right? And so, your audience, I just want your audience to know that you all have the power to make a difference. Just go deep inside and see what that is, and be true to yourself.
Thank you. Well, Dawn, I got to say this was a wonderful interview. I know that you mentioned when the cameras were off that this was your first interview, and I got to say you did an amazing job.
Oh, thank you.
I myself learned a lot about the Legal Kid Foundation, but more so, your why and your passion for this. I mean, anybody can make a foundation, but it's the impact, the intentional impact. And at your core, you have all of the makings of someone who is seeking to deliberately make an intentional impact, and that is so important, and I feel it. And without even meeting any of the kids or being in the rooms, but just how you describe the area and the scenery, I know you're making a difference, and I know you're really... No, seriously. I mean, you know how to paint a picture. And I'm just so happy for you.
Thank you.
Seriously, genuinely happy, genuinely proud, and just how you're growing and at the pace that you're growing. It's just a testament to your hard work. I mean, I mean, I haven't grown a foundation before, but I would assume, before we grow something, we want to see how the previous sites are doing.
Yes.
And for you to be growing so fast, that tells me that your previous work or your current work is so good, so grand that we got to add this in Toronto, we got to add this into UK. So you being the co-founder and executive director, that says a lot about you and what you stand for. So I just want to say congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. I truly appreciate the kind words. I'm just doing, like I said to your audience earlier, I'm just doing my passion. I believe this is the appointed time for me to make that impact. I said 25 years ago, if I ever had the opportunity to go back, I would, and here I am. And I'm just using the resources that surround me. And like you said, my why. I never thought about it from that way, but it's my why. The why is what got me over that golf invitational. The why is what gets me to cold climates, it's the why. And believing that every child, has the power to make a difference if we pour it into them and show them how amazing they are, right? And so thank you again for the opportunity to talk about this. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you.